For decades, the electric vehicle race had one set of rules: bigger battery, faster charge, longer range. Every manufacturer on Earth was playing the same game on the same board. Then something happened in a quiet engineering facility in 2024 that broke the board entirely. The results had been sitting in plain sight for months. The mainstream automotive press walked right past them, and the implications, if the early data holds, do not just change the race, they end it. Hi, my name is Matthew, and this is Reef Discovery, the EV race as we knew it. To understand why what just happened matters so much, you need to understand the world it happened in. The electric vehicle race did not begin with Tesla. That is a myth worth dismantling right now. General Motors put the EV1 on roads in 1996. It was leased to customers in California. People loved it. Then GM recalled every single one and crushed them. All of them. If you want a genuinely disturbing rabbit hole to fall into on a Sunday afternoon, look up what happened to the EV1 and the people who drove one. You are welcome, and I am sorry. The modern era of electric vehicles really began to take shape in the early 2000s, when battery technology started catching up with ambition. Lithium-ion cells, originally developed for a consumer electronics music, turned out to be the foundation the industry needed. They were energy-dense, rechargeable, and scalable. Every major manufacturer began pouring money into the same basic architecture. The formula was simple: pack as many lithium-ion cells as possible into a vehicle platform, manage them with sophisticated software, improve range with every new generation, reduce charging time. Repeat. Tesla accelerated this trajectory faster than anyone expected. The Roadster in 2008 proved that electric vehicles did not have to be slow, compromised, or ugly. The models in 2012 demonstrated that range anxiety, the fear of running out of charge before reaching a destination, was solvable with enough battery capacity. By 2020, every major automotive company on Earth had announced aggressive electrification targets. Volkswagen, Ford, General Motors, Toyota, Mercedes-Benz. The race was on, and the rules were settled. More kilowatt hours, better thermal management, faster charging, cheaper cells. That was the game. That was the entire game, and for 20 years, every competitor accepted those rules without question. The billions of dollars being invested were not going toward reinventing the fundamental architecture of electric propulsion. They were going toward doing the same thing, better, faster, and music cheaper. Incremental improvement along a known curve. Nobody was questioning the curve itself. That was the first mistake. The problem nobody was talking about here is the thing about incremental improvement. It works until it doesn't. The lithium-ion battery, for all its achievements, has a ceiling, and by the early 2020s, the industry was quietly uncomfortably aware that it was approaching that ceiling faster than the public understood. Energy density, the amount of energy you can store per kilogram of battery weight, has been improving steadily, but the rate of improvement has been slowing. The gains that seemed dramatic in the 2010s became smaller and harder won in the 2020s. The physics of lithium-ion chemistry impose limits that cannot be engineered away with better software or smarter manufacturing. You can optimize endlessly, but at some point you are polishing the outside of a box that cannot music grow. Charging speed presented a different kind of ceiling. Fast charging sounds wonderful in a press release, but what fast charging actually means at the electrochemical level is forcing large amounts of electrical energy into a battery cell in a short period of time. Do that repeatedly, and you generate heat. Heat degrades battery chemistry. Degrade battery chemistry enough times, and your 400-mile range becomes a 350 miles range, becomes a 300-mile range. The battery that looks so impressive on the showroom floor is quietly losing capacity in your garage every single night. Most owners do not notice until music is too late to do anything about it. Then there is the supply chain problem, the one that makes engineers go quiet at dinner parties. Lithium-ion batteries require lithium, obviously, but they also require cobalt, nickel, manganese, and a range of rare earth elements that are concentrated in a remarkably small number of places on Earth. The Democratic Republic of Congo, supplies over 70% of the world's cobalt. A significant portion of rare earth processing happens in China. The electric vehicle revolution, the one supposed to free the world from dependence on unstable fossil fuel. Supply chains had quietly built itself on top of a different set of unstable supply chains. Same problem. Music different mineral, different country. Not exactly the liberation story that got told in the press releases, and nobody wanted to say it loudly because the story was good. The story was working. Consumers were excited. Governments were offering incentives. Stock prices were doing interesting music things. The momentum was real. Why complicate it with the inconvenient geology of cobalt? But the engineers knew. The material scientists knew. Some of the more honest analysts knew. The foundation of the electric vehicle revolution had a crack running through it, and everyone with a blueprint was quietly hoping the crack would not spread before someone figured out what to do about it. Someone figured out what to do about it. That someone was not who the industry expected, and what they figured out was not what anyone was looking for. What Musk actually revealed. In 2024, details began emerging from SpaceX and Tesla engineering teams about a propulsion and energy conversion technology that had been in development largely out of public view for several years. Music now. I need to be precise here because this is where the mainstream coverage, the coverage that did exist, got genuinely sloppy. Most of the reporting focused on the incremental improvements to Tesla's existing battery platform, the new cell chemistry, the revised thermal management, the updated manufacturing process at Gigafactory, legitimate improvements, all of them good stories competently reported, but buried in the technical documentation, music in the engineering papers, in the presentations that got live-streamed to audiences of several hundred specialists and then clipped into forgettable highlight reels, was something different, something that was not an improvement to the existing architecture, something that was a replacement for it. The technology draws on principles developed through SpaceX's Raptor engine program. Now stay with me here because I know that sounds like I have just taken a sharp left turn into rocket science. In a sense I have. But this is exactly the connection that the automotive press missed because automotive journalists do not typically read aerospace engineering papers. Turns out, that is a significant professional blind spot. The Raptor engine, which powers SpaceX's Starship rocket, uses a full flow stage combustion cycle. This is a thermodynamic architecture so efficient that most aerospace engineers considered it theoretically ideal, but practically impossible for decades. The Russians achieved a partial version of it in the 1960s. Nobody else came close for 50 years. SpaceX not only built a working full-flow stage combustion engine, they built dozens of them, flew them, exploded some of them in instructive ways, and refined them into something music that works. What the engineering teams transferred from that program into automotive and energy storage applications was not the rocket engine itself. Obviously, you are not going to fit a Raptor engine under the hood of a Model S. I mean, you probably could fit it physically, but I would not recommend the test drive. What transferred was the thermodynamic architecture, the fundamental approach to energy conversion efficiency that the Raptor program had proven was achievable at an engineering level that previous generations considered out of reach. Applied to electric vehicle propulsion, this architecture addresses the core inefficiency that has haunted electric motors since their invention. Electric motors are already extraordinarily efficient compared to internal combustion engines. A gasoline engine converts roughly 30% of the fuel's energy into motion. The rest becomes heat waste. An electric motor can achieve efficiencies above 90% under optimal conditions. But optimal conditions are not driving conditions. Stop-and-go traffic, highway speeds, cold weather, steep grades. The real-world efficiency of an electric motor degrades significantly from the theoretical peak, and the energy management systems that try to compensate for these variations add complexity, weight, and their own inefficiency losses. What the new architecture does, and I want to be careful to describe this accurately because the details matter enormously, is apply stage energy conversion to the motor's power delivery system. Instead of converting stored battery energy directly to rotational force in one stage, the system uses multiple conversion stages, each operating at its peak efficiency window with waste energy from each stage fed back into the next. The thermodynamic principle is the same one that made the Raptor engine revolutionary. Nothing is wasted. Every joule of energy that would have become heat in a conventional system is captured and redirected. The preliminary results from internal testing, results that have been discussed in engineering circles for months without generating music a single mainstream headline, suggest real-world efficiency improvements of somewhere between 30 and 40% over the best existing electric motor technology. 30 to 40%. Let that land for a moment. The science behind the engine. To understand why 30 to 40% is not music just an impressive number, but a civilization-altering number, you need to understand what it actually means in practice. A 30% efficiency improvement in electric propulsion does not mean cars go 30% faster. That is not how this works. What it means is that the same amount of stored energy produces 30% more useful work, which means if you hold vehicle range constant, you need 30% less battery to achieve it, which means the vehicle is lighter, which means it is cheaper, which means the manufacturing process requires 30% fewer of those cobalt and lithium and nickel and manganese cells that the industry has been scrambling to secure supply chains for. You do not solve a supply chain problem by negotiating harder with the Democratic Republic of Congo. You solve it by needing less of what they produce. But the implications go further than supply chains, because weight matters in electric vehicles in a way that is not immediately obvious to most people. Batteries are heavy. A typical electric vehicle battery pack weighs somewhere between 400 and 900 kilograms. That is between roughly 800 and 2,000 pounds of cells that the motor has to move along with everything else. And moving that weight requires energy, which requires more battery, music, which adds more weight, which requires more energy. Engineers call this the mass spiral. And it is one of the fundamental physics problems that has constrained electric vehicle design since the beginning. Every kilogram of battery you add to increase range also adds weight that partially negates the music range increase. The diminishing returns are built into the geometry of the problem. A 30 to 40% efficiency improvement breaks the mass spiral. If you need 30% fewer cells, the pack is lighter. A lighter pack requires less energy to move, which means you can reduce the pack further, which reduces weight further. You are now in a virtuous cycle instead of a vicious one. And virtuous cycles in engineering, they tend to compound in ways that are genuinely hard to predict from the outside. Now, here is where the Raptor engine connection becomes almost poetic. The full flow stage combustion cycle worked in aerospace because it approached the thermodynamic limit of what is theoretically possible given the laws of physics. It was not a clever engineering trick. It was not a manufacturing improvement. It was a fundamental rethinking of how energy conversion is staged and how waste is recaptured. The efficiency gains were not incremental. They were structural. The same music principle applied to electric motor architecture does the same thing. It does not improve on what was there before. It replaces the underlying structure of what was there before. And here's the part that keeps certain engineers awake at night thinking about it. The technology is not at the edge of what it can do. The Raptor engine, when SpaceX first flew it, was achieving efficiencies that were remarkable. With iteration, with the refinements that come from actually running the system at scale, those efficiencies improved. The first version of this motor architecture is already producing 30 to 40% gains over conventional systems. It is not the final version. It is not even close to the final version. The question that the industry has not yet properly formulated, let alone answered, is not whether this technology works. The early data suggests it works. The question is what the ceiling looks like. And right now, nobody outside a small group of engineers in a facility most people have never heard of actually knows the answer to that. What the experts are saying and not saying. The reactions from the engineering and automotive communities have been, and I want to choose this word carefully, telling, not explosive, not dismissive, not the kind of noisy public debate you would expect if someone had made an extraordinary claim that experts believe was wrong. The reaction has been quiet, thoughtful, and in several cases, Conspicuously music delayed. When Tesla announced previous breakthroughs, the response from competitors was fast and confident. The 4680 cell announcement in 2020 generated immediate analysis from battery researchers at competing automakers. The structural battery pack architecture drew pointed technical criticism within weeks. The industry knew what to look for. The industry had opinions, and it shared them. The response to what has emerged from the staged combustion motor architecture has been different. Some of the most respected names in electric motor engineering have published nothing. Some have given brief, carefully worded comments in trade publications that amount to acknowledging the technology exists and declining to assess it further at this time. One senior engineer at a major European automaker, speaking without attribution to a technical publication, described the architecture as requiring more study before evaluation was possible. Requiring music more study. That is not what experts say about technology they believe is wrong. That is what experts say about technology that they are still trying to understand. There is a meaningful difference between, I have looked at this, and it does not work, and I am still looking at this, and I am not ready to tell you what I think. The first response dismisses. The second response reveals several academic researchers in thermodynamics and motor design have been more direct in private communications that have been shared within engineering networks. The consensus among the small group who have examined the technical documentation most closely appears to be that the theoretical basis is sound, that the efficiency claims are plausible given the architecture, and that the primary uncertainties are around manufacturing scalability and long-term reliability under real-world operating conditions plausible, though given the architecture, from people whose professional lives are built around skepticism of exactly these kinds of claims. The silence from competing automakers is the loudest signal of all. Volkswagen has not issued a rebuttal. Toyota's hydrogen fuel cell division, which you might expect to see jumping on any evidence that pure electric propulsion has fundamental limitations, has said nothing. General Motors, which has spent billions on its Ultium battery platform, has not commented. Ford, which has been having a genuinely difficult time with its electric vehicle programs financially, has not addressed it. When incumbents go quiet about a potential disruption, it usually means one of two things. Either they have assessed it, and music found it insignificant, or they have assessed it and are terrified. The behavioral music patterns here, the careful language, the delayed responses, the conspicuous absence of dismissal do not look like the first category. The industries that should be terrified right now. Let us talk about who loses if this technology does what the early data suggests it can do. The obvious answer is the traditional automotive industry. And yes, manufacturers who have committed tens of billions of dollars to lithium-ion battery platforms are sitting in a complicated position right now. But the traditional automakers are actually not the most exposed. They have been aware at some level that the battery architecture they were building on was not the final answer. They have research divisions. They have been watching the space,